The 4 psychological patterns that appear before a system breaks. Ladies and gentlemen, history often surprises us with one uncomfortable truth. Most systems do not collapse overnight. They appear stable right up until the moment they aren't. From the outside, everything may look normal. Institutions still function. Leaders still give speeches. Official statements still sound confident. Yet beneath the surface, a completely different psychological process may already be unfolding. Political scientists, military historians, and behavioral psychologists have observed a fascinating pattern throughout history. When a system enters a period of serious stress, the decisive phase often occurs not during the crisis itself, but in the weeks and months that follow. This is the moment when a society quietly decides whether it will stabilize or begin moving towards something entirely different. And when systems fail, 4 psychological patterns tend to emerge. Pattern 1, cracks begin to appear inside the enforcement structure. The first signal rarely comes from angry crowds. It usually comes from the people responsible for maintaining order. At first, the signs are subtle. Orders take longer to execute. Responses become less coordinated. Different factions begin interpreting instructions differently. These changes may appear insignificant, but psychologically, they are profound. Why? Because every system ultimately depends on one thing: the belief that authority will be carried out consistently. Once people inside the enforcement structure begin questioning, hesitating, or acting independently, confidence throughout the entire system starts to weaken. The public may not see it immediately, but insiders often do, and insiders react first. Pattern 2, information starts escaping. The second pattern is equally revealing. Information begins leaking. Secrets that were once carefully protected suddenly find their way into public conversations. Documents appear. Private discussions become public. Anonymous sources become more active. Most people assume leaks happen because security failed. Psychologically, that's usually not the most important reason. The deeper reason is that people inside the system begin believing disclosure is more beneficial than silence. Think about that for a moment. A leak is not merely information moving from one place to another. It is evidence that internal loyalties are changing. The psychology has shifted from protection to self-preservation, and that shift is often difficult to reverse. Pattern 3, the search for an exit intensifies. The third pattern is frequently misunderstood. Observers often see increased negotiations, diplomatic outreach, or unusual communication with external actors. Many assume these actions represent strength. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they represent something else entirely. When uncertainty rises, individuals and organizations naturally begin creating contingency plans. Psychologists call this risk management behavior. People seek alternatives. They build relationships. They create escape routes. In other words, they prepare for futures they once believed would never happen. The greater the uncertainty, the stronger the desire to secure options. This is not necessarily surrender. It is survival psychology. Pattern 4. Events become difficult to control. Eventually, a critical threshold may be reached. Before this point, leaders manage problems one at a time. After this point, problems begin appearing everywhere simultaneously. Economic pressure, political disputes, institutional conflicts, public dissatisfaction, information crises. Each issue reinforces the others. The system becomes reactive instead of proactive. And something important happens psychologically. Control shifts from individuals to momentum. At this stage, events often move faster than decision makers can respond. History shows that once momentum dominates, outcomes become significantly harder to predict. But what if a system survives? What psychological patterns emerge then? Interestingly, we often see the opposite response. Not less control, more control. The psychology of survival. The first step is usually personnel restructuring. Leaders begin surrounding themselves with people they trust. This is not primarily about competence. It is about predictability. During periods of uncertainty, trust becomes more valuable than expertise. Organizations under stress simplify their world into a basic question: who is with us and who is not? Nuance disappears. Ambiguity becomes uncomfortable, and leaders increasingly favor certainty over flexibility. The battle for perception. The second response involves information management. At this stage, controlling events may be difficult. Controlling perception may be easier. That is why struggling organizations often focus intensely on narratives. Behavioral psychology teaches us that people do not react to reality directly. They react to their perception of reality. Control the perception, and you influence the behavior. Delay decisions. Reduce uncertainty. Maintain stability. Whether in politics, corporations, or institutions, the fight often becomes a battle over interpretation rather than facts alone. The power of an external threat. The third response is one of the oldest strategies in human history: maintaining an external challenge. Why? Because shared threats create unity. When groups become divided internally, a common external concern can temporarily restore cohesion. This phenomenon appears everywhere, from nations to corporations to sports teams. Humans are tribal by nature. The moment a clear us versus them framework emerges, internal disputes often become less important. Fear simplifies decision-making. Uncertainty increases the appeal of strong leadership and simple messages. That psychological reality has existed for thousands of years, and it remains true today. So, what should we watch? If you want to understand where a stressed system is heading, don't focus on headlines alone. Watch behavior. 3 indicators matter most. First, observe the enforcement institutions. Not what they say, what they do. Consistency, speed, and coordination often reveal more than official statements ever will. Second, watch intelligence and security structures. Are they becoming more anxious and reactive, or more organized and effective? The answer often reveals whether a system is destabilizing or consolidating. Third, watch external contacts. Are individuals quietly building their own escape routes, or are groups moving together with confidence and coordination? Individual movement often signals uncertainty. Collective movement often signals that a direction has already been chosen, and that may be the most important lesson of all. The future rarely announces itself with dramatic speeches. It reveals itself through patterns. The people who recognize those patterns early are often the ones least surprised by what happens next. If you enjoyed this analysis of power, psychology, and human behavior, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. New videos explore the hidden psychological forces that shape history, leadership, and society.